Hi everyone, my name is Katie and today I'm doing my video presentation story 3 on Phoebe and her unicorn, and it's presented by me, and the story is by Dana Simpson. So the summary of Phoebe and her unicorn begins with Phoebe encountering a unicorn named Marigold Heavenly Nostrils, who grants her 3 wishes, which Phoebe uses one to request Marigold to be her friend. Although Marigold is a little uncertain about Phoebe at first, the story follows their overall friendship together while Phoebe navigates self-acceptance, friendship, and the struggles of growing up. So the visuals, the story is a comic-style novel that contains cartoon-styled illustrations with exaggerated facial expressions and words. For example, when Marigold talks, it makes the font fancy-like to showcase her vain personality, or the usage of bolded large fonts to create a sound. The illustration is very cutesy and really makes you feel like a part of their story and overall world, and the scenes really allows you to follow through with its colorful and whimsical stories. So I provided some examples. So this is in the very beginning. Phoebe asks, "Do you have a name?" And Marigold responds, "I do." And then in the very fancy font that I mentioned, she goes, "I am Marigold Heavenly Nostrils." So very enunciated and very almost gives you a sort of a room to imagine how her voice sounds. So I thought that it was really cute and I wanted to include that. And even in the next scene where Phoebe goes, "I am officially the most awesome girl in the world." So it kind of gives you room to insert your own voice for them and narrative. I also provided the next scene as I mentioned before, that they do use big and bolded words to kind of showcase a sound. For example, Phoebe slaps Marigold with a pillow and it goes whack, and it kind of just makes you hear that, or kind of makes you use that sort of onomatopoeia in your head. Example, even the next scene when Marigold throws it right back to Phoebe, it goes woof, and so you kind of just think about it in your head as well. Alright, moving on to genre. So Phoebe and her unicorn's genre is categorized as children's fiction and graphic novel, with subcategories such as fantasy and humor. Fantasy, as Marigold is a magical unicorn that is able to grant wishes. Humor, as there are various scenes that provide sarcasm, wit, and scenes that Marigold and Phoebe find themselves stuck in. There are even some bits of humor that adults can enjoy as well. And then I'm providing some examples here. So in this scene right here, Marigold and Phoebe are talking about things that they're eating, and Phoebe goes, "Ew." And Marigold responds, "Ew." And Phoebe goes, You eat grass." And Marigold goes, "Don't you eat birds?" And Phoebe goes, "Yes, but with seasoning." So it's very cute, and it's almost giving them that sort of humor, that bicker between the two while they're still developing their own friendship. And in the next scene that I provided, the next slide, it's actually in the very beginning. Phoebe goes, "You're a unicorn, right?" And then Marigold goes, "Mm-hmm, and you're clearly a genius." So it's very sarcastic, and it's you have to read between the lines and really understand the tones. And for the adult humor, I included this scene specifically. It goes, so Phoebe and her friend, well, her enemy at first, they kind of go through this journey of Phoebe wanting to cut Dakota's hair, and Dakota and Phoebe end up actually learning to like each other because Dakota kind of bullies her at first, and she's kind of like the school's it girl. And right here they go, Phoebe goes, I'm almost sorry you got your hair back. You could have been my Lex Luthor." And if you guys don't know what that reference is, it's Superman, and Lex Luthor is Superman's like villain in his story. So it's very funny. If you know humor. Now moving on to direct quote. I really liked this quote because it stood out to me, but it's Marigold. Marigold goes, "There's no shame in failing something. Every great success is a result of many previous failures." And then right afterwards, she says something very vain, but the reason why I picked this quote was because it really resonated with me, and I can see how this can impact a younger audience who reads this. It's important for children to be resilient in their goals and their journeys and continue even if they think they failed. This quote really highlights how we overcome our obstacles to get to our end goals. So I feel like this is really important to encourage younger students or children to continue and just build that determination and just continue on even if they think that they failed. And it's really important for us to encourage that, and books are very important, and I feel like books can really help push that sort of goal for teachers as well. All right, and then I provided the page right here where Marigold and Phoebe are kind of talking, and this is after, to provide some context, this is because Phoebe and Dakota ended up being friends after Phoebe had asked Marigold to zap off her hair, and she asked Marigold to give back Dakota's hair, and so that's why Phoebe goes, "I guess I failed at being a detective," and Marigold goes, "There's no shame in failing sometimes. Every great success is a result of many previous failures." And this is where Marigold says something vain, of course, and she says, "Let me tell you about the first time I failed at not being perfect." And then Phoebe, of course, goes, "You had me there, but then you had to go on and say that." For the strengths, I found 3. The first one is humor. So the book has many comedic reliefs and situations that the author creates that really brings a sense of relief to the reader in situations that may seem awkward or hard to understand. For example, in the very beginning of the book, Phoebe says that she's going to bring Marigold to her show and tell, and when she goes up to the front of the class, Marigold is not there to be seen at all, and so she's kind of just standing there like going like this, and nothing's there, and Dakota and her little group of friends are like making fun of her and pass this note saying that she's stupid. And I thought that the author did a really good job at creating some sort of comedic relief and expressions that really carries the story into a deeper level of humor that words can't describe sometimes, especially with facial expressions. Rather than making Phoebe feel embarrassed, she actually makes Phoebe stand up for herself by storming out and looking for Marigold. And the next strength I wanted to talk about is the art. So speaking of expressions and art from the previous humor, the illustrations are very vivid and bright, making Phoebe and Marigold's stories and words come to life. And I've already shown you some of the slides, but they're very detailed, and they show almost every scene of what's happening, which I feel it can really bring out a sort of narrative and movie into a child's imagination when reading this book. And the last one I wanted to focus on is character development and growth. So Phoebe and Marigold both develop as people/animal, since Marigold is a unicorn or mythical being. Phoebe, who is naive and impulsive at first, begins to learn critical thinking and rational thoughts. So she starts practicing patience, and she actually starts, like, for example, rather than just giving in to getting revenge on Dakota, she decides to take back her revenge and apologize to Dakota and give back her hair, if not make it more luscious. And Marigold as well, although vain at first and still has her moments, she begins to see Phoebe as a friend and even guides her through various obstacles they face, putting her pride aside sometimes. Now moving on to weaknesses. Some of the weaknesses that I found were language. So there are scenes that have a lot of outside context you should know in order to make scenes funnier or relatable. For example, the Lex Luthor scene, unless you know about Superman, it wouldn't really be funny. Also, sarcasm is very heavy in this book, so some sentences and way to say the words is intended to be heard with a more mocking and humorous tone. So if you're not too sure of the way Marigold is speaking, and sometimes Phoebe, because Phoebe will respond to Marigold's sarcasm back with sarcasm, so there's that bickering. You might suggest that they're arguing, or you might suggest that they might not like each other for a younger audience, but rather than that, they're just being sarcastic to another. And I feel like sarcasm is, in a sort of way, you only are sarcastic for the most part towards people you're comfortable with. So I think that's the message between the sarcasm language that they have, is because they're bickering. It's almost giving that push and pull and that sort of comfortability, trust within each other, to not really cross a border or boundary with each other, which is why I feel like the author included sarcasm language. And graphic novel, the reason I included this as a weakness was I found that the book can be overstimulating at times. There's a lot of illustrations on a couple of scenes that your eyes can't help gear towards, that causes a lot of confusion when reading, or distractions, especially for children who haven't read graphic novels before. Although it can be fun and a new engaging way to read, it can create a lot of distractions and confusions. And again, although graphic novels are really great, for example, I love reading graphic novels even as an adult, I can see how it can be really distracting for children. So I feel like it's a really great, I'm glad that in the beginning they do kind of decrease the amount of illustrations, and as the story progresses, the illustrations do get a lot more detailed. So that is a pro that Phoebe and her unicorn does have. And moving on to our last segment, classroom application. So this book is more geared towards grade 3rd to 6th grade, ages 8 to 12. And since the book contains themes of friendship, bullying, and dealing with loneliness, I found it important for these impressionable ages to learn and navigate hard topics with a lighthearted approach, such as Phoebe and her unicorn with this book. And an activity I thought is creative storytelling. So students will create their own magical creatures inspired by the imaginative elements of Phoebe and her unicorn, and then write and present a description of their creatures to the class. This activity encourages creativity, storytelling, and speaking skills while exploring the world of fantasy. So again, this is more geared towards grade 3 to 4, or ages 8 to 12. And then this is a example of what I provided, like a worksheet of how it looked like. I included like a little imaginative character that I found that was really cute. But once the students have finished drawing and writing about their magical creatures, they will present their creations to the class, and each student should explain the name and appearance of the creature, the magical powers of the abilities their creature possesses, the creature's personality, and what makes it unique, a short story or adventure involving their creature, or real or imagined. And so this is just a really short guideline of how the worksheet could look like, but it can vary. It can be changed up or include different things and moved around. But that is overall my video presentation on our section book 3. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you are interested in reading Phoebe and her unicorn, I highly recommend it. It's a really funny and great read, and thank you for watching.